When someone throws an accusation, you feel you are obligated to answer, explain, and disinfect every corner of your name, yet this reflex is the leash that escorts you from autonomy to voluntary captivity. The average performer of reputation maintenance blurts clarifications before the crowd even judges, hoping that transparency will act as disinfectant. But the instant you open the vault of self-defense, you advertise the secret that you might indeed be weak enough to need it, and power, like a wolf, smells that wound before your sentence ends. Imagine a courtroom with no judge, only spectators hungry for direction. The first voice to speak sets the coordinates of truth, and the second voice, even if louder, automatically competes on those borrowed coordinates. If the first voice is an attack and the second is a defense, the architecture of dominance is already cemented. The defender kneels on conceptual marble, the attacker quarried. He who explains submits. He who remains silent forces others to fill in the blanks, because silence is not a void. It is a mirror held up to the accuser's insecurity. Think of non-reaction as a glass shield that turns incoming arrows into mirrors. The archer sees himself rush back and doubts the wisdom of loading another shaft. When provoked, you breathe once, let the silence widen like a cold front, and watch the challenger begin to edit his sentence in real time, haunted by the empty auditorium of your unblinking calm. This is the silent, split-second decision that flips gravity. The longer you withhold rebuttal, the heavier their words sound in their own ears until self-doubt outweighs bravado. The trick is older than gunpowder. Roman consuls doomed rivals by sitting motionless while Senate gossip ricocheted off pillars. Venetian diplomats negotiated by blinking less than their adversaries. Modern interrogators secure confessions by letting suspects babble into the echo of their own guilt. What unites these eras is the recognition that perception, not fact, crowns power, and perception obeys confidence like iron filings obey a magnet. Perception is everything because minds cannot accurately weigh objective truth at the speed of conversation. They judge posture instead and call it evidence. Never defending yourself does not mean never speaking. It means speaking only to expand control, never to regain it. The power judo throw operates by letting the attacker's momentum hurl him past the target. Suppose a colleague sneers that your proposal is naive. The amateur answers point by point, polishing the insult. The strategist lifts his gaze to the ceiling, lets the room taste 5 seconds of pin-drop tension, then says, "Naive is the label pessimists slap on unlicensed ambition." A single sentence reframes the discourse, leaving the critic floundering in fumes of his own sarcasm. You might worry that silence permits lies to fossilize, that fear reveals addiction to explanation. Crowds forget specifics by lunchtime but remember emotional geometry for decades. They remember who looked desperate and who looked serene, who raced for permission, and who behaved as though crowned by invisible precedent. Your serenity is the fortress stone by stone that outlasts any mud thrower. Accusations evaporate when they cannot find humidity in your anxiety. In personal relationships, the principle magnifies through intimacy. When a partner demands why you failed to text back, you can launch 37 justifications or close the laptop, meet their eyes, and ask, "Do you want an explanation or a solution?" That is a turn of the blade, redirecting blame into constructive terrain. It is not cruelty, it is leadership within the shared kingdom of emotions. Digital arenas intensify temptation to defend because applause metrics seduce vanity. When your name trends for an alleged sin, post nothing for 24 hours. The mob's dopamine cycle needs immediate friction. Starvation triggers auto-cannibalization. Threads devolve into conspiracy dissertations about your mystical quiet. Factions scrap over whether you are defeated or ascended, and both theories balloon your legend. Meanwhile, you sip coffee, proving silence when delivered with presence speaks louder than any justification ever could. The psychology is simple. Defense equals confessed vulnerability. Children caught with a broken vase insist the cat did it. Executives caught with bad quarterly numbers blame weather. The observer smells the whimper under the narrative. When no narrative arrives, the mind scrambles for closure, often allocating wisdom where information is absent. You are letting other brains manufacture your reputation on a budget of their own fantasies. Nonverbal dominance extends into orchestrated absence. Arrive 5 minutes late to the meeting convened to examine your competence. Glide in without apology. Take the seat farthest from the projector and begin taking notes as if auditing their relevance. Your calm lateness reframes the session as a petition for your attention. When they ask for your view, let another silence bloom, then outline the next action steps, making zero reference to prior criticisms. The room feels a redistribution of atmospheric pressure. Reputation management divides into two species. A good reputation is friendly, transparent, eager to placate. It is beloved until challenged, then it fractures. A strong reputation is enigmatic, respected, slightly feared. It is questioned rarely because challengers anticipate the public autopsy of their own bravado. Cultivate the latter by pairing predictable excellence in results with unpredictable economy in words. Consistency in output combined with scarcity in commentary breeds myth. Zoom into tactical micro-gestures. When peppered with loaded questions, answer the larger principle you wish had been asked and ignore the bait. If someone accuses you of ulterior motives, reply, "Intentions glow in outcomes. Watch the outcome." This precision cut extricates you from the defendant's box and seats you in the judge's chair. The accuser must keep talking to stay relevant, each syllable a receipt. Delay is the accomplice of dominance. Emails dripping with hostility marinate in the sender's stomach while you enjoy lunch. By the time you reply with 2 sentences, one logistical, one forward-looking, the fire has spent itself on imagination. Even in face-to-face conflict, you can deploy micro-delays. A sip of water, a deliberate breath, a glance toward the window that frames you against wider horizons. Those seconds are mini-gravity wells recalibrating tempo to your pulse. You may fear being labeled evasive. Understand that labels require consensus, and consensus is a market manipulated by supply of words. Offer none. People cannot auction a label if the subject refuses to step on the platform. They shift focus to easier prey. Your silence is cruelty to their craving for engagement, and cruelty educates without stains. Negotiation further illustrates the profit of silence. Rookie buyers counteroffer instantly, bleeding eagerness. Seasoned negotiators let silence thicken like syrup until sellers sweeten their own price out of discomfort. You speak last, when the number has already drifted toward your hidden target. That is control of the frame achieved through curated absence, proving again that clarity is for therapy, control is for power. In social gatherings, gossip assassins test boundaries with sly digs. Instead of laughing along or rebuffing, meet their eyes until they glance away, then resume original conversation as though a mosquito buzzed past. The room recalibrates sovereignty. People orbit your gravity, adjusting tone lest they collide with your unspoken standard. You did nothing, yet you govern everything. Questions about genuine mistakes arise. Machiavellian discipline is not allergic to accountability. It simply forbids supplicant posture. Correct errors by stating the fix, not the guilt. Say, "An update has been deployed," rather than, "I'm so sorry I messed up." One is a solved puzzle. The other is an unending confession. Your poise determines whether the event registers as tremor or cataclysm. Long-term, the refusal to defend cultivates an aura of immunity. Critics rehearse attacks in the mirror and abandon them, worried they will appear shrill against your calm canvas. Opportunists invite you rather than risk exclusion from your myth. Even enemies attempt to copy your restraint, creating a hierarchy of imitators beneath the originator. Power becomes effortless, a gravitational certainty like tides, not a cyclone summoned by daily exertion. Gloating is defense of victory, proof you still lust for confirmation. The highest tier of domination is serene indifference to applause. As Lao Tzu whispered, "The best ruler is scarcely known to exist." When results arrive, the people say, "We did it ourselves." Let others misinterpret your quiet. Miscalculation keeps them docile. This symphony ends with paradox. The more you explain yourself, the more alone you look. Explanation isolates because it positions you outside the tribe. Pleading for re-entry. Mystery, by contrast, attracts followers who want to solve it together. Better to be an intriguing silence many discuss than a gabbling performer none quote. You now face a decision between the addiction to justification and mastery of frame. One path devours evenings drafting defenses, the other liberates time and aura. One broadcasts hunger for clarity, the other radiates command that makes clarity kneel. Never defend yourself unless the law or the scalpel requires unequivocal facts, and even then deliver the minimum viable syllables, a ration that starves gossip and nourishes only the record. This is the coldest move, the brutal law, the judo flick of not answering the door when doubt knocks. It is easier than you think, harder than your habit, and more electrifying than any speech you could rehearse. Begin now. When the accusation arrives, feel the reflex surge, then drown it in the vacuum you control. The room will tilt, the accuser will shrink, and the narrative will pivot around the silence you sculpt. Control, once ceded, is expensive to reclaim. Control, once seized, rents space inside every observer's imagination without paying a dime. Modern neuroscience corroborates the instinct Machiavelli observed. An accusation triggers amygdala alarms in both speaker and target, yet only the target can dampen the circuit by refusing verbal combat. The attacker's cortisol floods longer in the vacuum, producing discomfort that the brain interprets as potential error. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, unburdened by improvised justification, allocates bandwidth to observing micro-tremors in the opponent's speech, giving you strategic telemetry. This is not mysticism, it is biochemical leverage disguised as stoicism. Silence alone is skeletal. Flesh it with micro-expressions that whisper dominion. Keep shoulders low, chin neither tucked nor raised but level, as though balancing a coin on the bridge between pride and indifference. Breathe diaphragmatically so your torso remains unmoved by each inhalation. Observers may not label the detail consciously, yet they register a subliminal stillness that animals read as apex presence. When you finally speak, drop the tempo half a step beneath the room average and end sentences in downward inflections that sound like closed gates, signaling the discussion has expired. Consider a triptych of real-world arenas in which the trick flexes. In a boardroom quarterly review, an executive blames you for revenue shortfall. Rather than unfurl charts, you ask, is the goal finding fault or finding profit? The table quiets because your counter-question implies the meeting's frame may be childish. Later online, a writer with a large following calls you fraudulent. You screenshot nothing, you tweet nothing. Instead, you post an unrelated insight about market trends. Curious onlookers pivot from scandal to study as the accuser's thread wilts in your indifference. At a family dinner, an uncle mocks your career, expecting fireworks. You refill his glass, thank him for interest, and ask how his garden fares. He withers under hospitality he cannot label as weakness. In each case, no defense was delivered, yet every power line reversed direction. Power compounding resembles investment interest. Small acts of non-defense accrue to exponential perception premium. Each incident in which you remain unshook deposits credibility coins into an invisible account. Months later, you negotiate a merger, and counterparts, influenced by the legend of your imperturbability, concede clauses before you raise an eyebrow. Year after year, the legend curates itself. You are the person storms cannot rattle, hence the person entrusted with fragile cargo, high-stakes secrets, national budgets. Critics will say perpetual composure is inauthentic, that vulnerability oils human connection. Note the trick. You are not erasing vulnerability, you are quarantining it from hostile use. Your closest allies, lovers, and mentors may witness your doubts behind closed doors, but the public square is a coliseum, and displaying viscera there entertains lions. Morality is not offended by boundaries, morality is offended by hypocrisy. You are announcing that not every passerby earns a tour of your basement. That is not deception, it is architectural integrity. The ultimate elegance of never defending yourself is cognitive liberty. Time once spent rehearsing retorts becomes surplus attention for design, study, creation. While rivals obsess over your non-existent clarifications, you prototype futures. They invest adrenaline in imagined battles, you invest tranquility in real infrastructure. This asymmetry scales. One man screams in the marketplace to protect his stall. Another silently buys the building. Swinging at smoke exhausts the swordsman and entertains no one. Yet every weapon carries risk. A silence deployed without presence reads as shy, not sovereign. Therefore, practice in low-stakes settings. Let a friend's harmless tease float unchallenged and notice how they eventually comment on their own joke. Graduate to moderate stakes. Allow a coworker's misguided suggestion to linger until they pivot for lack of feedback. By the time high-stakes conflict arrives, your restraint has muscle memory. You are not icy, you are trained. When the moment finally comes that demands speech, court testimony, medical consent, high-integrity leadership, you speak with surgical brevity. 11 words can outweigh 1,100 if each lands like a gavel. People lean forward to catch them because scarcity inflates value. The principle echoes in branding. Luxury houses drop limited collections so that absence breeds demand. Your sentences are limited editions sold at premium because you rarely open the shop. Fashion houses guard logos. You guard explanations. There is music in this maneuver. Silence supplies the bass line, presence the percussion, minimal speech. The solo instrument. The audience sways without understanding why the composition feels inevitable. They mistake inevitability for truth. By orchestrating perception, you grant yourself dictatorial license over tempo, mood, and conclusion. The composition may be only 30 seconds long, yet listeners exit humming your theme for years. Eventually, the strategy alters ecology. Teams meeting without you ask, "What would she say?" because your restraint convinced them that any eventual statement will be decisive. Universities host lectures dissecting your negotiation silence as case study. Aspiring leaders misinterpret your absence as mystical technique and mimic only the hush, forgetting the backbone beneath. That is your final leverage. Observers cannot reverse engineer what they cannot measure. They can replicate your void, but not your reasons. Every empire collapses when rulers start answering propaganda rather than writing it. Nero sang his innocence while Rome burned and the Senate laughed into sleeves. Lincoln, accused of secret atheism, replied, "My response is the Gettysburg battlefield, letting results reign." Churchill responded to disgust at his cigar schedule by winning a war. The pattern is visible from antiquity to telegram. History awards laurels to those who drown noise in outcome. Walk through any hospital ward and you will see the physiology of urgency etched on monitors. Heart rate spikes, blood pressure soars, survival demands fight or flight. Yet surgeons, those aristocrats of crisis, train to move their hands slower as the situation becomes dire, slicing tissue with winter morning calm. Their quiet scalpel saves life where frantic sawing would doom. Adopt the surgeon's posture in social surgery. Your steel blade earns awe. Some ask whether this philosophy breeds loneliness. It does the opposite. It filters your circle to those comfortable with unhurried energy. You attract collaborators who prefer signal over noise, allies who trust quiet capability more than flamboyant promises. Relationships built on mutual steadiness outlive those built on hot glue emotional disclosure. You are not isolating. You are curating resonance. Detractors might allege cowardice. Courage, however, is precision resource allocation. Wasting energy to refute every stone thrown by every passerby is bravery only in fairy tales. In real courts of power, bravery is confronting existential threats while escorting trivial insults to the door without comment. The lion does not roar at flies. He flicks a tail and continues surveying the savannah. As you implement this creed, measure progress not by applause but by unruffled mornings. When you open email and find no urgent clarifications demanding dawn energy, you have expanded sovereignty. When meetings end earlier because you declined the defendant role, you have compressed time into opportunity. The arithmetic is elementary. Fewer defenses multiplied by constant competence equals exponential mystique. Machiavelli's original Italian prose carried a flavor modern translations polish away. He wrote with the acidity of a man certain that the masses prefer spectacle to structure. By withholding spectacle, you force them to focus on your structure. Brickwork rarely goes viral, but centuries later it still stands while gossip clippings crumble. Build yourself into masonry. Storms admire it. Tourists photograph it. It is now clear why the dictum holds. Defense screams that the accuser owns the premise. Explanation concedes the script. Justification surrenders the throne. Silence keeps the crown inside an unbreakable glass dome. You do not touch it, polish it, or show it. Yet everyone sees the reflection and respects the distance. Therefore, exit this page with a single resolve stitched into your nervous system. The next time an arrow of doubt whistles toward you, let it thud harmlessly into the shield of your silence. Examine its feathers, then drop it for the archer to reclaim. You will notice the archer hesitate before knocking another. You may even see him lower the bow, encumbered by the sudden realization that he was aiming at water while believing it stone. The duel ends not with your victory cry, but with his puzzled retreat. The rest is mathematics of habit. Today you refuse one needless defense. Tomorrow two. Soon your reputation begins writing its own ghost-written legends. Weeks accumulate into charisma, charisma into influence, influence into authority. Authority, when fermented in the barrel of enigmatic presence, tastes to onlookers like inevitability. At that stage, you no longer practice the trick. You have become the environment in which the trick is native atmosphere. Better to be confusing than predictable, because confusion freezes offense while predictability fuels it. By staying unreadable, you compel enemies to waste reconnaissance while you advance unobserved. They build ladders for walls you already walked around. Their energy funds your momentum. Finally, remember that the universe itself never defends its laws. Gravity issues no press release when doubted. It merely continues lowering apples to ground and letting planets pirouette. Emulate that cosmic arrogance. Be the principle that functions without apology. Let the skeptic consult reality and discover your design woven through the outcome. Step into that silence and witness how empires bend, how storms reroute, how futures await instruction patiently.